They gave me a sword. They gave him a spear. They said, fight. They didn't give us choreography. They didn't do anything of that sort. And when the director yelled cut, having been an actor, director says, cut, you stop. He was a fighter. And, as you know, the bell rings, you still swing, like you wait for the referee to pull you apart, and I ended up kind of put this up there, right there on my middle finger knuckle. You can kind of see that scar there.
Oh, yep.
He didn't stop. That was from his spear. It almost severed my finger.
Welcome back to the Sign Good Health podcast. Today we're talking with Lee Fillingsness. He is an actor, martial artist, and all-around Viking beefcake. So, Lee,
I'll accept that description. That works for me.
Lee, do you want to tell us a little bit about your martial arts background, and then we'll go into your film background?
Yeah, I've been doing this since 1984. So 37 years. Geez, I shouldn't be that old, but somehow I am. I was in a unique position. As you know, I'm a very large person, and I started being much larger than my classmates at a very young age. So starting at about 10, they started training me in the adult classes instead of the kids. And starting at 14, I actually started fighting in the adult divisions instead of the kids, various karate, judo, and taekwondo. Because it was not fair because at 14, I was about 6'4", 240. It wasn't fair for me to fight boys, but it also is not fair for a 14-year-old of any size to fight men. So I had one of my first matches was against a Marine, and he thoroughly kicked my butt, and then realized that I was a kid. And he kind of walked over, gave me a little tough love. He said, hey, if you want to keep doing this, you got to start taking it seriously. And fortunately, in a moment of wisdom, I actually took the advice instead of acting like a kid and started training with better and better people. Trained in Muay Thai with Steve Iverson. Taught me how to hit really hard and also how to get hit really hard, because that's the other side of Muay Thai. You will get hit. Was very lucky to have a brief opportunity to train with Bill Superfoot Wallace. And if you ever see me kick, you will see that I stole everything I know from him. Man was a genius. And I was actually teaching somebody some of his inside techniques the other day. Cross-trained in a whole bunch of martial arts, Eastern and Western. Fought for the University of Iowa in 2 different martial arts for 3 years. I have 2 national championship medals, 1 gold, 1 bronze. For one art, I have 2 U.S. Open championships medals in another, and I actually went to the World Championships. And that was in Kumdo, kind of the sister art to Kendo. In there, I also was able to train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu under Pedrino Silveira, who's part of the Carlos Enrique family. Was able to do some judo with Vitek Andrich, did some traditional karate with Dale Parker, was able to do Asian Ryu-Aido, Aikido. Lately, I've been kind of training when I can in HEMA, Historical European Martial Arts.
Yeah.
Actually been able to train with Paul McDonald out of Edinburgh, and that's been quite the experience. He is the world's foremost expert in Highland weapons. And Roger Norling out of Sweden, and he actually teaches kind of a inclusive fighting system that involves everything from daggers to 10-foot long halberds. And every time I train with him, it's usually in a group of martial artists that are much more advanced, and he still kicks the crap out of all of us and makes us all feel sore for a week later. And when you kind of get to a certain level, you're the one that does that to people, and you kind of forget that there are still a few people left in the world that can do it to you. As I like to tell people, if you can name it, I've done it or something like it at this point. Martial arts is a language to me, not just one style. I won't claim to be a 9th degree, dragon master of anything, but I've studied enough of a lot of martial arts to be very good in quite a few.
Yeah. So I don't think I said this at the beginning, but the point today we're going to talk about is the difference between real life martial arts and filmmaking. So let's start with a little bit with your film background. Like when did you want to start getting involved with filmmaking?
Well, I always wanted it. I loved movies when I was a kid. I mean, movies got me involved in martial arts. I wanted to be a Jedi, and they didn't have a Yoda in my town, so my dad signed me up for karate at 7 years old. That was my birthday present, in fact. Um, I didn't really get the opportunity till the very late 90s. I want to say it was the summer of 99. And it was originally an extra thing. It was as many things are in the Midwest. It was low budget and poorly organized. And so, as an extra, they said, "Hey, you want to be in some fight scenes?" And I, of course, said yes because I'm young and nothing can kill me. And so they're like, "Do you have any background?" And I kind of did the same thing I did with telling you my background, obviously minus 20 years. So not as long of a story, but they put me with another guy. They gave me a sword. They gave him a spear. They said, fight. They didn't give us choreography. They didn't do anything of that sort. And when the director yelled cut, having been an actor, director says cut, you stop. He was a fighter. And, as you know, the bell rings, you still swing, like you wait for the referee to pull you apart, and I ended up kind of put this up there, right there on my middle finger knuckle. You can kind of see that scar there.
Oh, yep.
He didn't stop. That was from his spear. It almost severed my finger. Went back, talked with the director and the producers, and basically said, this is completely unsafe, and ended up stepping in for him. And doing a lot of the fight choreography. Some of the stuff had already been written, but I started supervising more of it, and ended up going from extra to stunt player to fight coordinator to actually doubling in the film, which I've only watched once because it's as bad as you might imagine. I can't bring myself to watch it again. You actually see me die 4 times because I felt I was the only one safe enough to have a sword swung at them by the heroes, who had also not been trained. I hold nothing against them. What you and I do is a very specific skill set, and it's not something that everybody has, especially in the U.S. Actors in England tend to have some sort of stage combat background, but these were just a bunch of random dudes that said, "Hey, let's make a sword fighting movie," and nobody bothered to teach them how to sword fight. So since then, I went on hiatus once I got kind of into the upper level fighting, but after kind of hanging up my gloves and whatnot, didn't have the outlet that fighting used to give me. Didn't have the reason to get up and train. Didn't have anything to show for what I was doing in martial arts, and decided to get back in movies. And that again, and that was about actually 10 years ago last week. Local filmmaker and I got together and started working out a concept for a film. I ended up training the cast over the course of about 2 months. We did one fight that we spent about 7 hours shooting was a 5-on-3 fight.
Wow.
And technically, we should call it 11-on-3 because several of the people that died, because they're bad guys and wear bad guy clothes, they just changed weapons and a little cost. Yeah, so we recycled bad guys, and we filmed all day in just horrible heat, and our bad guys were wearing kind of rubber armor because it looked enough like leather, but it was a lot cheaper. And nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
And we had a variety of weapons. We had the main bad guys using double swords. A couple of the wizards are using staves. We had halberds. We had single swords. We had, you name it, it was being used, and it was all mixed.
Yeah.
And everybody ended up looking amazing. And nobody got hurt except for the cameraman, who we kept on telling him, dude, take some water, sit down. He was wearing a Steadicam rig, and he had a heart attack the next day.
Oh.
But yeah, so film can take its toll on you, but I proudly, that scar I showed you is something that I've been showing people every time I take over on a set, and I say, hey, here's this thing I got 20 years ago. That's the only injury that's ever happened on one of my sets.
Yeah, this is serious.
Yeah. But yeah, since then I've done a ton of fight scenes in the Twin Cities, more and more over the last 4 years, mostly because I've gotten better as an actor. So a lot of producers realize they can bring me in as an actor, have me play the bad guy because I'm a 6'7", 290-pound beast.
Great looking guy.
So all you have to do to say I'm a bad guy is have the good guy look at me and be scared. So you don't need to spend time explaining that I'm a bad guy, which is expedient in filmmaking. It's something that is a good thing, even though it's a little bit crazy. And then they also get a fight coordinator from me, and they, now I've won several awards for best fight and various other things, and I somehow became a go-to guy. And I will say straight up, I know several fight coordinators who are much better than I am. And I know a few actors that play a better bad guy than I do, but none of them do both.
Yeah. I can't, when you were telling the story of the term battlefield promoted takes on a new meaning.
True enough.
So let's talk a little bit about, so you got real life martial arts competition. There's a few different forms. There's like point sparring and kata, where it's more of a performance, breaking, and then like an actual fight.
Yeah.
So flashy moves with that, they do have a place, but for well, let's just start with that and then we'll go into movies with flashy moves. So yeah, like I was told by a martial arts instructor that like with flashy moves, it's like it gives you another tool to use, because if you're throwing your standard, maybe one of the 6 main punches and a roundhouse kick, like that's pretty limited and you're going to be pretty predictable. So if you can add in like spinning dragon backflip kick or whatever,
Yeah, I've found there's again, being tall, some of the flashy moves actually worked for me. And so much of what we see as the flashy move is kind of, to steal from baseball, it's the windup and the pitch. So there's a lot of people sell what the pitch is going to be in the windup, but if you can kind of cut it out, you can actually sell a better move. There was when I was fighting in Taekwondo for the University of Iowa, there's kind of a jump spin roundhouse kick. It's called a Narabanshagi. And if you were to do it just on its own, it's easy to see. But you kind of do a step and then spin behind and throw the kick. And the spin behind, if you sell it like it's a back kick, which is a very devastating move.
Side kick thing.
Yeah. And I've decisively won fights just on back kicks. When people see that move coming, they dodge in a certain way. So you sell that your step behind is a back kick, and then when they kind of get out of the way, you throw this roundhouse kick up right behind it. And I was very good at doing that to head level, which has a double duty. Like if it hits very hard, and if it misses, they realize that you're going to throw something crazy at them, and suddenly they're on their heels and they're running away from you most of the match. I've scored a lot with head kicks, but I'm very fast with them and I can still get power. And mostly I like it. I trained with Bill Wallace, and there's we have a myth that head kicks are slow and easy to see, and that's because the bronze that I said I got at national championships, guess what? It was a kick to the face that took me out of the match. I was ready to keep going. I couldn't stop bleeding for about 10 minutes, and the refs wouldn't let me get back in the ring. So that's why I got a bronze instead of a silver or a gold. But there's some of the flash, you can interpret it and it has a place. Sometimes it's not even like what you're seeing as the flash is actually meant to be something else. But for the most part, nobody teaches what that is. In Japanese martial arts, it's called bunkai. It's like, here's what you're seeing, here's what it actually is. Most of the time anymore, nobody does that because they can make the same amount of money having 30 kids lined up in a class, doing their ki eyes and flopping their arms and legs around until they get a black belt.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag if you're going to find a quality instructor. But so it sounds like the point is like you're not standing on the opposite ends of the ring and flying through the air with like a Superman punch or a kick or whatever. It's like the point is doing something tricky to open them up and hit them with something unexpected.
Yeah, like I never lead with a hook kick, what people now call a roundhouse kick. But if I see a roundhouse kick coming in towards my stomach in a certain way, I know that I can throw the hook kick and catch them before they can set their foot down. And all I have to do is kind of put a block in so that it bounces off me instead of actually gets that point. And you have to time it right, but that's any move.
Yeah.
And when you fight in a specific ring, no matter what it is, you have specific moves that you can and can't do. You have specific parameters, and you learn to fight within those parameters. I know a lot of guys when I was in, because everyone was trying to simplify martial arts, would only try to score kicks to the stomach because they had learned it takes too long to get to the head, and it's like, no, not really. But it also made them very predictable and very easy to exploit. So I like to have a lot of things that I can do at any given time.
Yeah, because if you know it's either A or B, it's pretty easy to look. But then you throw C, D, E, and F. It's like, what do you do? Cover them.
Well, and I think that's honestly one of the reasons why I ended up with national silver medals when I did kendo, is because I trained in Europe for about a year and a half in basically free for all sword fighting. It's not competition, but like, oh yeah, I can cut you to the ankle. I can. There's one move called the coup de Jarnac where you actually try to cut somebody's hamstrings. And then when I came back and started doing kumdo and kendo, all I can hit is the wrist, the side of the stomach, top of the head, and in certain competitions you can go to the throat if it was agreed on. And so those are the only places that people could go to on me. And suddenly, oh, I have a lot easier time defending because I only have to look for 4 things instead of an infinite number.
Yeah. Well, the other thing with weapons too, like I haven't done a ton of weapons training, but I did get to do a little bit of. Do you know about the Saber Legion, the lightsaber fighting?
Oh yeah, I've got a couple really good friends doing that.
Yeah. So when I was doing that, it's totally different with the range that a weapon gives you compared to what I'm used to with hand-to-hand stuff. So my lead knee got destroyed.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of one of the crazy things when you start doing weapons is realizing all the stuff, because you don't look for your knee as much. I mean, you can kind of pull it back somewhat when you see somebody rushing in, but like you said, you don't have the same amount of time when somebody's swinging 36 inches of a blade at you.
Right. Yeah. So, and I've played tennis and like racket sports, so I'm used to kind of knowing my reach with a thing. So that part was fine. It's just getting used to the other guy, because I'm not in tennis. You're not whacking each other. You're like across the court. So, but still, it's very fun. Very cool stuff. So.
When I was doing kendo, like the basic stance, your body is over your front leg almost completely, and Master John, the guy that I started training with, he kept on like, because I would do my Highlander, my Obi-Wan Kenobi stances, and then he just tapped my knee. He's like, "Why is that there? You're getting yourself closer to me, and you're getting your blade further away."
Yeah, so, I definitely like instinctively kind of figured out just a basic fencing stabbing approach for the lightsaber worked pretty well.
Yeah,
for me at least, with next to no training. So, but anyway, so what's okay? So we did that. So with fancy moves in fighting or in a movie, I guess it really depends on the fight scene. But in general, you want the move to look good on camera, so that kind of changes the game a little bit.
Well, there's that, but there's also you want the audience to see what's happening. Guys like you and I, with years and years in the martial arts, we're going to recognize things that happen in split seconds. And we're going to recognize the nuance of a properly done technique. But, 95% of the world has no clue the kind of stuff that we know to look for. And again, no fault of their own. It's what you and I have done with our lives is by many metrics ridiculous. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to go and have somebody kind of throw me around, kick me, punch me. I'm going to break my nose. I'm going to dislocate several joints, that sort of thing. But in movies, you want the audience to recognize, oh, this is a big thrust. This is, he's winding up for this huge punch. Ways that you would never really do in a real fight, but the audience needs to see what it is. Because, most of the time a real fight is boring. I mean, it's violent and it's visceral, but the moves themselves are basic and kind of grunting. Even most sword fights, there's a little bit of footage available from, I want to say it was Aldo Nadi, one of the last duels in France. They actually have some newsreel from it. And he breaks several of his own rules, and he actually apologized to a lot of his students that he used to yell at because he did things in fights that he would like smack him on the back of the legs for. But to that point, though, to look good on camera, but also to be something that the audience will recognize. Because, I mean, the master strokes that you and I know, I mean, aren't going to be something that anybody else recognizes. It's like, oh, that's just a regular punch. No, that's a very hard punch. Oh, I mean, think about a figure four, how devastating that can be when properly applied. It's really hard to put the pain that can cause on film.
Right.
So you end up, if you have somebody doing Jiu Jitsu, they do it like Black Widow. So that you see somebody getting tangled up and controlled, and I mean, otherwise you have to spend 20 minutes explaining the mechanics of a figure four, of a Kimura, of an omoplata, of all these things that you and I do naturally, and we know from experience, wow, these work and they hurt.
Right. So when you're doing choreography, like, talk a little bit about like what it's like working with like a martial artist as opposed to just a actor that doesn't necessarily have the background.
I will say my favorite people to work with on a fight scene are trained dancers. Martial artists, again, like that first one that I worked with, we all are trying to win. And we have that ingrained in our heads. We have a response system. This is coming at me. This is what I know how to do. We're either going to have it in our heads, like, and kind of arrogantly, like, not play the part right because I can kick the crap out of this guy, or we have to so be in control of where we are that we don't actually perform. We're just doing the choreography because that's all we can't be in character and lose. Even though as a monster that plays bad guys, I have to lose every fight. And I'm generally training the person to look like they can beat me. And that's a skill set. But with a dancer knows how to hit their mark. And knows that the movement is the purpose, not necessarily the attack, not necessarily the impact. So I can get a dancer to repeat a movement pretty much exactly 100 times in a row and have them do it the way that I want to at the speed and rhythm that I want to. Whereas a fighter may have the skill set to do beautiful moves, but the more often that we do it, the more that move changes. Because we don't, most of the time, even like the people that fight in kata or that compete in kata, they won't repeat a segment of a kata 500 times. Or, generally I will have somebody, if we're doing a fight scene, I'll have somebody do it 3 or 4 times per camera angle. So you'll have what's called the master, which is the big wide shot where you can see everybody head to toe. And then you go in for what's called a cowboy or a 2-shot. And that's basically from the hips up. And then we'll do OTS behind one person, OTS behind another person, and they'll have to do these same moves 4 or 5 times, depending on if they do it right, for each camera setting. And doing that reliably over and over again gets a little trickier. However, if I have quote unquote just an actor that doesn't know how to express with the body, that can be tricky. And when I say express with the body, they can kind of act and they can embody a character, but to express violence,
right,
having never done it, and having never danced, because dance, even though, pretty and whatnot, you can still express emotion through those movements rather than emotion through posture. If the actor doesn't understand how to kind of express aggression and tiredness, it gets a little tricky. One of my favorite things to do, and actually I won my first Best Fight Award with an actress. She was playing a pit fighter, fantastically talented actress, and they didn't have a fight choreographer for the thing, and it's a movie about pit fighting. So a friend of mine recommended me, and I took this actress, and we went to the gym, and for basically 3 days, I had her hitting a 180-pound heavy bag. And just bam, bam, bam. And she's like, "Oh, this hurts." I'm like, "Yep, this right here is the world that you live in if you're this fighter." Because nobody really talks about, like, when you hit something, it hurts you. Like if you're, I fought men's heavyweight. I've been fighting men, in the mid 200s, 220 to 260 from the time I was 14. And that has done a number on my joints. But even, at lower weights, you're still hitting a human, and that punches back at you. And that exhaustion and that pain, you can't pretend that what that feels like until you've done it. And so put her through this, gave her the exact moves that I wanted her to do. And we ended up winning Best Fight against some very stiff competition, 2 fight choreographers that I admire quite a bit, who've actually trained me. But because of the acting and the work that Rachel did, we just had a fantastic fight. It was really fun to see it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about when you're going through the choreography process. Do you look at the character's particular background, or how do you kind of go about choreographing the scene?
Well, first I try to get a sense of what the tone of the movie is, and I learned that actually pretty early on. I was working on a movie, actually the one I was talking about, the one I did 10 years ago here in the cities, and talking with the director and everything. And I'm like, okay, well, here's kind of what I'm thinking. And I just came up with these really big, brutal fights. And they were just awesome. And then I realized that the tone of the movie was much more childlike. I had kind of done, some sort of Sam Peckinpah bloodfest, and it was really supposed to be kind of, sort of a kid's adventure, Dora the Explorer, but in a medieval world. So it was a little bit mismatched. So now, one of the first things I do is I try to find the tone of the movie. Then I figure out what the skill level is of the actors, what I can get them to do, and what they're going to be comfortable doing / having done to them. And I can usually get people, and I explain what it is and what I want to see. I can usually get people to do what it is I like. But if they're uncomfortable, I never push it. And then try to figure out what the character is. I actually was on a conference call 2 days ago for a movie I'm filming in Duluth on the 1st. And I just needed to clarify with the director and producer what a certain character's background was, because he's got this great big bar fight. The way that it was written in the script, this guy could either be a ninja master, or he could just have just been beaten on his whole life and isn't really afraid of violence and kind of knows a few dirty tricks, and that's how he wins the fight. And it wasn't expressly clear in the script that I had received or the treatment, so I needed to make sure. And then from there, I take a look at the body types, what's going to be interesting on screen. If I've got somebody fighting me, what's going to look interesting when they hit me, when they start winning, when they start losing. And then I try to think about the environment that I'm going to be in. How far, even though it's a 2-dimensional screen that I'm watching, I like to move 3-dimensionally in my fights. So I like to move backwards a little bit. I like to, maybe even rush the screen as I can. And then I sort of let the fight grow. If there's something specific that the director wants to see, I'll always do that. But at this point, most of the time, the director's telling me to have fun.
Mhm.
and they'll dial me back. They say, this doesn't feel like the movie, and so I'll take something out of there. But really, it's what I like to do is make a fight that looks natural and believable, but one that I haven't seen yet.
Mhm.
And my main thing is I never like to have a pause in my fights. I hate when there's like bam, 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 and then they just kind of sit there and look at each other like moment of respect, or like that. If my fighters have time to quip, I haven't done my job as a choreographer. I really like to see just two people trying not to die and trying to make the other person not live.
Right.
And I like desperation and a little bit of exhaustion. And I'll work as much as I can with the camera people. If they'll bring the DP in for rehearsals, I will say, okay, here's where I would do a camera change. So instead of having one master shot, which if I'm dealing with very qualified stunt actors, I'll do master shots all day.
Mhm.
But if I'm using actors that have done one or two fight scenes, but it's not, again, you and I have spent years doing this. Most actors haven't. Most actors have spent years being actors. Repeating and doing a fight scene over and over again. This last one that I did is about 1.5 minutes long, which is an eternity when you're fighting with weapons, especially if you have to do it over and over again. If I can make everyone comfortable and make everyone look good and get the cuts basically built into the choreography,
Mhm.
the audience on second and third viewing are going to be like, oh yeah, that's where they made the cut, but they're not going to care. But if I have like all these pause moments where, and I've built them in to other fights, but like suddenly I'd be like, why would they stop there? So I'll criticize my own fights, but like if I can just get a good slugfest and people just feeling desperate, that's what I want to have in a fight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was gonna ask about like, because I know like Jackie Chan and like the Eastern filmmaker guys, they'll, like you're saying, like they'll build, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they'll build the cut into that sequence, and then it's like now we're over here, bam, bam,
yeah,
bam, 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 and just kind of building it that way, as opposed to in the West, it's much more, we're gonna have 8 cameras running, and we're just gonna figure it out in the editing bay.
yeah, and I mean, I've done a few like that as well. And if I've got good stunt crew, guys with a background, and girls, I should say, because I know several very, very talented female stunt actors and fight coordinators. If I've got the people that can do that, yeah. But one of the things is with that makes film safe is playing specifically to a camera, to one camera, and knowing where that camera is. And so I can play with the angles, play with the distance. Say I'm here, my fighters are going like this to camera. If I go like that, now it still looks like they're pointing at each other, but they're actually at different levels. So fighter A is actually going to strike to the left of fighter B, and fighter B is going to strike to the left of fighter A. So they'll never actually be striking towards one another, but to the camera, because they're translating 3D into 2D, we can make it look like there's some danger. And if you time it just right, with the reactions, it'll look like somebody got hit, even though they were never, within 2 feet of a fist. And when you start adding secondary cameras into that, suddenly those angles are going to expose all the little tricks that we do.
Man behind the curtain kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. You can do it, but again, you're getting much closer. And
Right.
that's more of the old school. You see Van Damme doing a lot of that. But that's also why he's, what was it, on Cyborg? He
Universal
just,
Soldier.
oh no, on Cyborg, he took somebody's eye out. A guy
Oh.
named James Pickney. He decided to change the choreography without telling anybody and stabbed the guy in the eye with a kukri,
Oh.
which of all the things that I don't want to be stabbed with, a kukri is really near the top of the list.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I just watched Goodfellas and they do the ice pick, but still,
Oh,
it's like, um,
speaking of one of the movies that gave me nightmares, Casino,
mm,
when they had the baseball bat scene in the cornfield. I, I was a grown up when I saw that. Gave me nightmares. 2 years ago, I had to do a baseball bat stunt, and basically, like I'd been playing a bad guy, but not really a bad guy in the film itself. It was just kind of a prank. One of the characters didn't know that and came in, was supposed to kind of tenderize me with a baseball bat. Supposed to go to the stomach first to kind of get me to bend over so that I could do kind of one of those perspective tricks with camera,
right.
and so that I could turn away and he could swing it past my head and I could, and it would be, a few feet away, but to camera it looked like it hit me. And so he could look like he hit me with it. He had gotten into character, and instead of going for my stomach first, he swung at my head.
Oh.
And because I was so freaked out by doing a baseball bat stunt from this movie from 1995, when he swung the wrong way, I was already halfway expecting it, and I stepped back, grabbed the bat in midair. I'll send you the link to it because the director let me keep it, and just looked at him. I'm like, no, gut first. 2 days later, like the adrenaline wore off, and I was like, oh, that should have been that should have been the second injury on one of my sets, but it wasn't. So
yeah. So is there like a style of choreography that you kind of like or have a favorite, or do you kind of adapt it? You kind of touched on it, like touching on the tone of the movie, but
I'll tell you, I stole most of my style from Anthony DeLongis, who is the guy that taught Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford how to use a bullwhip. He was Blade in the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe movie. He was on a couple episodes of Highlander, which is, again, one of the, I've got a ponytail. Love that show. But he was also in Jet Li's Fearless. He was the Spanish sword master that he fights at the beginning. And he had this, after I got that promoted from extra to fight coordinator, I got his VHS tapes. That's how long ago this was. The broadsword for the stage and screen. And while it was just broadsword that he was teaching, it was so in depth on how to understand the camera angles and how to look dangerous but be safe, that it stuck with me more than anything else, because I can take what I learned about how to throw a broadsword around and not hurt anybody and turn that into a round kick. I can turn that into, pretty much, if you kind of keep your mind nimble, you can translate that into another physical language. And I've trained and certified with the Society of American Fight Directors now several times. And I actually just started doing that a couple years ago because I realized, I'm out here doing this without any certification. But there's also a language that a lot of actors are now learning. And so if I'm going to talk to them, I should know what they're speaking. And if I'm going to change and do something different from what they know, I should at least know where my departure point is.
Yeah.
But Anthony DeLongis, definitely my guru when it comes to fight choreography.
Yeah. So it sounds like the projects that you've been involved in, they actually devote enough time to doing the fight scene properly. Like, have you seen that be I guess, is that always why isn't that always the case?
Well, I'd say it's about 30-70, how much time I get to do the fight scenes. One of the things that has been kind of my saving grace, and I think why I get the work that I do, is I am the guy that will come in last minute. I would love, to have the 2 months beforehand to train the actors and to develop the fights. But I also had a couple experiences in 2017 of actors and actresses that I knew being on sets where they just gave them weapons and said, "Here, go." And I was called to a couple different sets. like on the day of filming, and the actors are freaking out, but they can, at a certain point, like in an industry where you're not famous, you can't back out. But I was kind of a trump card. And so I'd come in and I would, with the amount of time they gave me, I would do the best possible fight that I could.
Right.
And I teach people exactly what I want them to do. And I'm a control freak with the director. I'll be like, hey, guess what? I'm directing now. I'm telling your cameraman where to set up, and I get to call cut, and I get to call action. And then from there, those actors can now feel safe just knowing that I'm there, because I'm a big stickler on safety. But one of the other things is I say is like, I will teach you to be as safe as possible, but you're still not safe. If you're swinging, even if it's just a slap, much less a sword, you're still in a dangerous situation, but I'll give you the language to be as safe as we possibly can. And so the actors then are able to act and feel safe because they know that I'm going to do my very best not to let anything happen to them. And that I, kind of proud of my safety record, and that, I won't let them do anything I don't think they can do. And so I have a few directors that have a habit of like calling me up last minute. I won't name names because they're a lot of fun and I love working with them. But I had a guy call me up on a Friday and he's like, hey, I'm kind of doing this shoot. I just need some like prop rifles. Well, what kind of rifles? Well, I'm thinking kind of like military. And I'm like, okay. So I scrounged up basically a pile of assault weapons, but all like airsoft and BB gun stuff, but looked real enough. Showed up and he's like, hey, do you think you could show these guys a few things? I'm like, well, what do you want? Well, I was thinking, if we can get them to march like a unit and then, kind of shoulder arms fire, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, oh, you mean the stuff that drill sergeants spent, a couple weeks yelling at us to figure out how to do properly? You want me to do that in about 45 minutes? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, I'll see what I can do. And I was able to do it somehow.
Yeah.
But then there's others that will reach out to me and say, hey, I've got this idea in my head and Z-Fest is 6 months out. Mm-hmm. Here's what I want to do. I was watching this, I was playing that, I was, doing something. I've got this idea. What do you think? And then they'll give me the time. And I've worked now a few times with Vanessa Horrocks with Oxford Comma Collective. It's a film group. The first time I won that best fight at Z-Fest, another fight that I had done for her was also nominated. I kind of think it was the better one, just from a technical aspect. The drama was better in the one that won, but technically I think our fight was better. She wrote me up. She's like, I really want to win this year. How much time do you need? Here's the setup. What should we do? And I honestly feel like if I don't win this year, there had better be an absolutely brilliant Jet Li level fight, because it is the most brutal, the most complex, and but natural fight I've ever done. It's a guy with an empty rifle trying to reload, but it's on a single point sling, so he can't really use it as much as a offensive weapon. He can kind of defend with it, versus a guy with a K-bar, which is a Marine Corps fighting knife. And it's until the moment where somebody dies, you have no idea who is going to win the fight. It is not pretty, and no pauses. And these guys just came in, and I was stealing stuff from Marine Corps combatives, Sicilian knife fighting techniques that I've been kind of playing around with, some Jiu Jitsu that you definitely recognize, but being augmented by a rifle. So imagine doing a figure four, but you've now got like a rifle butt to kind of push against. I mean, it's really good stuff. Even like Aikido, like the 13 point or the 13 step staff kata, using these techniques but putting it together in a way that like looks like these guys are just straight up operators, ex-military, but stealing whatever I can from anywhere.
Yeah, even just hearing you describe it, I can definitely see the awesome desperation survival like that you talk about. So that sounds.
Yeah. I can't wait to see it on screen in an audience.
Mm,
And that's one thing that I really like. Z-Fest is making sure to do this year, that they want to screen everything in a theater, because I have a feeling I'm not going to be able to hear the movie, because I'm going to hear people going, oh, and just like cringing and having like these visceral responses, because this is not pretty, this is not nice, this is
mm,
brutal but well choreographed, and
yeah,
I'm really proud of this fight.
yeah. So look forward to that in Z Fest. Um, let's see. So yeah, it's just interesting. You're talking about like it seems like uh, I don't know where to word this, but like the problem of ego, like where do you run into ego problems like when you're all safety, you're the safety sheriff?
I do, um, and it's completely understandable. I still have to do it, um, and because it's you you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but you also don't want to hurt their bones and their skin and their muscles. And if I've got somebody that I can't rely on to do something safe, I've gone and talked to directors. I'm like, I can't work with this person, and I'll say, ultimately it's your call, but like I can't put this person in a fight with somebody else. And so they're little workarounds. And I will admit to having had some ego myself, mostly because when I kind of was started doing this stuff, people would see me and it's like, okay, basically I would get Hulk smash kind of moves, or I would get kind of slow, big, dopey guy, looks scary but easy to take apart. What I kind of call the Buffy the Vampire Slayer choreography.
Mhm.
All you have to do is a jump kick and suddenly you win. And that also helped me to be a better choreographer, because I stopped choreographing for the winner and I started choreographing for the loser. Because if there's going to be any drama, the winner has to have risk. So uh, if the winner has all the good moves, who cares about the loser?
Boring. Yeah.
Like it's preordained. But if the loser can believably get the crap knocked out of him and then believably win the fight, you have a loser overcoming not only the initial perception of the fighter or of the opponent, but you're also overcoming like a complete physical deficit, a complete, overcoming pain, overcoming exhaustion, think about Rocky 2. He won a fight against a guy that destroyed him before. Rocky 3, same thing. All these moments, like if you set up the bad guy as more than just bad looking, but actually capable of winning the fight,
Mhm.
then you've got drama. There's a few choreographers that I've worked with who only choreograph for the hero. And there was one I did where there was like 11 of us who are top tier stunt guys. I'm a former champion martial artist. We had a professional wrestler. We had 7 other guys that were just like kind of masters in their own field, various weapons. And all that we did was get killed. Couple of us got 1 or 2 moves, mostly because we asked.
Mhm.
But it's like, okay, why would you even bring us in to get shot and stabbed?
Yeah.
Like, why do you have us?
It's like what I keep seeing. I get frustrated when I see Scott Adkins in movies because it's like he's this incredible guy, and then he's just this grunt who gets like sidelined, and it's like, come on.
Oh yeah. Well, and was it Rick Casamassa? The guy, he was the agent upgrade in Matrix 2.
Oh yeah.
But he was also Scorpion and Sub-Zero in the first Mortal Kombat movie. He was also, I think he was the guy that got kicked in the face by the horse in John Wick 3. But he's just like one of these fantastically talented martial artists that really is there to do like 2 spin kicks and then die. And I would love to see more people like him kind of get a chance.
Right. Yeah. So I guess, do you have advice for martial artists who want to get into acting / stunt work?
Yeah, work on your kata and work them hard, and know that you can set your feet down exactly where you need to every time. As much as the actual fighting ability kind of comes from being in the ring, your ability to be a good stuntman and a good on-screen fighter is the ability to put your hand, foot, weapon exactly where you want it to, and be able to stop exactly where you want it to, and to be able to do it reliably and repeatedly. I'm, especially with COVID, I've been coming back to kata a lot more than I had in the past, because I was a fighter. I've got a few kata medals, but most of my medals are for full contact fighting. And it's humbling, and it's one of those things that most people are either good at one or the other. And the really good fighters, in the ring fighters, tend to stay away from kata, but it actually can improve your game if you look at it the right way. If you do the bunkai instead of just like, okay, down block, reverse punch, that kind of thing. But also kind of put yourself in the put your white belt on again, because there is some very necessary humility that comes with it, because there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to be told to lose, which we don't like to do.
Right.
We have learned how not to lose. We have learned how to win. We have learned how to survive. We've learned how to get out of just about anything. You really have to you have to be the uke. You have to let the attack work against you. You have to be the person that gets thrown, and you have to do it in such a way that you're a generous partner to your nage. And I'm certain a lot of your listeners are going to know uke nage. The uke is the person that gets thrown in judo and jiu-jitsu. The nage is the person doing the throwing, and so you give them enough of a move so that they can react, but you're gonna run into a lot of people that feel they know more than you, do know more than you, and or don't know more than you. But eventually, if you're going to get anywhere with it, you have to be able to take direction. You have to be able to perform your kata. You have to be able to be the uke. You have to be able to be reliable and be safe. And that's that can be tricky if you're a really good fighter. I still, I've been doing, stunt fights for a couple decades now, and I still have to every so often be like, I'm not supposed to win this fight. I can't do this move that is completely obvious to me to destroy this person. So I have to get in there. And I'd also recommend taking a dancing class. Yeah. Whether it's ballroom, ballet. Actually, I found ballet when I was fighting really helped me a lot with my mobility. But the ability to just find your mark and repeatedly do that type of motion, and if you can turn what we do into a dance, and ballroom, like if you're doing a waltz, there's a lot of stuff that transfers into Aikido and Judo. The way that dance frame moves, the way that I can manipulate somebody, very similar. If you've got that mindset to kind of see that. But yeah, and keep up on your general fitness, because it doesn't look like it's going to be more difficult than actual fighting, but it really can be, because you're just going to be in the same place over and over again. You're not going to be in gym clothes.
Yeah.
You're going to be in jeans and a t-shirt. You're going to be in biker boots. You're going to be, if you're a pirate, you do not want to fight in a pirate costume. My God, it sucks. Cowboys too. Sucks so much. Even though it's so much fun playing cowboys, like you don't want to have a fight in that. It's like you got the big old duster on, you got the 6-gun on your hip, like it's all messed up.
Yeah. I always am really impressed when I see a girl kick in high heels.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I definitely like. I've only done a couple projects where I've been involved as a fighter and an actor, and I definitely agree with you with like you feel that I can kill this person. I don't want to be beat up and having to override that. So
well, and if you can also build the relationship with the person that's beating you, such that you can make their moves better.
Yeah.
It does take the sting out. Like if they look like they know what they're doing instead of they look like they got choreographed to beat your ass. And as a fighter yourself, you can kind of say, okay, watch the shoulders. If I'm seeing the shoulder come across, everything that you're taught to look for as a fighter is exactly what you should be telling an actor to do versus what you tell a fighter not to do. So when that shoulder comes across, like, oh, as soon as I see that, guess what? You're getting a little chin music. But to the audience, if they're seeing, that shoulder wind up, they're going to see a power move. And so now, not only is your opponent looking better, but you now have a little bit more time because now you've got this cue to work with. And, if you're blocking, if you're supposed to respond to it, you can use all that little thing, use the time as wisely as you can.
Yeah. Well, and like my personal background with training, personal training, like fitness, weightlifting, and then also like teaching people martial arts, like that does help with, being safer, I find. And then I also got into ballroom and swing dancing when I was in college, and like a couple like theater things I've done where you learn a dance, like that's really fun. So, and I mean, you can even point to Bruce Lee because he was the cha-cha champion in Hong Kong.
Yep.
So
1959, I want to say 1960.
Yeah, something like that. So there's definitely, leave your ego and put on your white belt, and like you were saying.
Yeah.
So what about advice for like actors and directors working on a scene? Like, is there anything you want to shake someone and get through to them?
I would say that basically, if you want to do a fight scene, get somebody involved early. Don't try to do it on the day unless you know the person. I have a few people that I will plan stuff ahead of time for and choreograph on the day because they know that I can get the fighters to do it. And they're generally people that trust me, so that when I work with them and I tell them to do something on the day, they can just do it. But again, kind of have the humility. The fight choreographer is going to know every trick of how to make the fight look good.
Mm-hmm.
If you disagree with your fight choreographer, the fight choreographer is right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just going to be a matter of like, you never want to shoot at a completely perpendicular angle. So basically, like if the two fighters are facing each other and like they're straight on facing each other, not kind of shifted like I was talking about before, but if they're straight on facing each other, you never want to have the camera kind of at that 90 degrees from them.
Right.
Because everything that I'm going to do to make it look like the fighters are in danger, like playing with the angles, is going to disappear. Now it's going to be like, oh yeah, that sword never would have hit, that sort of thing. So always shoot somewhere between 70 and 35 degrees off center from the fighters. And that gives them enough room that they can look like they're in danger and completely not be. And that's going to make the performance better. It's also going to kind of have the eye travel left to right more instead of go to the middle and try to go left and right the whole time. You're actually going to see a little bit better what's going on. It's better framing. And definitely if anybody involved in the fight process feels uncomfortable, fix it or skip it.
Mhm.
Because if I've got an actor that just doesn't feel comfortable with a move, they're not going to look good on screen. That
Right.
scene is going to be shot. So find a way to fix it. Work with the fight coordinator. Get a double. Just change the angles completely so that it's okay. So that they're 5 feet away from each other, but you just do a forced perspective and find a way. But if they're not comfortable, they can't act their way through that part because
They're worried.
like I said, we make it as safe as we possibly can. It's not safe.
Right. So this will be fun. Are there like action movie or fight tropes that annoy you? Like I know some military guys get cranky about gun inaccuracies.
Um, yeah, there's quite a few. Well, the first thing is not every weapon makes the shing sound when it's being pulled out of a scabbard. It's really just Civil War era cavalry sabers because they have a metal scabbard, and that's the only ones that do that. Big broadswords are not heavy. They actually weigh about a pound more than most rapiers. Let's see. There's I kind of touched on it a little bit. Big guys aren't always slow.
Hulking, yeah.
Yeah, they can have some speed, and if they do, that makes the fights more interesting.
Yeah. There's a guy I trained with that's about your size, like he's 6'7" and
Yeah.
I'll say over 250. I'm not positive, but he was a Division I wrestler and a Taekwondo black belt. And when I was training with him, he was a blue belt in Jiu Jitsu, and now I think he just got his black belt. So it's just like, how do you fight that guy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let your your good guy has to shine, but he's going to shine a whole lot brighter if your bad guys put up a fight.
Mhm.
And if they don't, it's sort of pointless. And if you're going to do, kind of on that same note, like if you're going to have a good guy fight several people, don't do it one at a time.
Mhm.
Find a way to mix it into the choreography how he's able to survive it. Maybe he goes does like a 300, goes into a narrow alley so they can't surround him. Maybe I actually just choreographed something for that. A guy walks in between two SUVs, so only one person can kind of come at him. But
in the Warriors, they're fighting the baseball Furies and they run, and then one catches up and they take him out and they keep running.
yeah,
It's like, and then I actually saw that, and they did that in Rurouni Kenshin where they explained
yeah,
that strategy too.
yeah.
Like one for me that I hate is just a person is dangling from a cliff or a helicopter by one arm and they're holding on to somebody, and it's like, how hard it is to hang on with one arm, like
Yeah.
the rock climbers.
Yeah, that one always kind of gets me. The finding an emotional reason to do something that your body said you couldn't. Like, somebody's watching me, and now I have to like prove myself. So like Black Panther did this when he in the first fight against M'Baku.
Oh yeah.
When they're having the fight at the falls,
Mhm.
he's losing, and then his sister's like, "Show them who you are," and he's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot who I am." It's like, no, this is how good of a fighter you were before this. Your sister doesn't change that. In fact, I mean, I actually used to ask my family not to come watch me fight because suddenly my head was somewhere else, and I would want to perform and kind of get the good boy from my family instead of like actually be focused on my fight.
Yeah.
So the fighter is as good as they are, emotional or not. I kind of touched on a little bit. I don't like pauses in the fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One that bugs me, and I think it's more of a horror movie type thing, but it's like, I've got you, I throw you across the room, then I'm gonna walk over there, pick you up, and throw you again, and it's like, come on. Or
Interestingly enough, the origin of that comes from old Hollywood.
mm,
It's called the cowboy drop. And what happened was they would punch somebody and they go to the ground, but nobody wanted to reset the cameras, so you'd pick them back up and start fighting them again. And so you wouldn't go to the ground, you wouldn't ground and pound them like you and I have been trained to do. It's like, well, you better get up on your feet so I can punch you some more. And that was that's part of the language that we now have of a fight.
mm,
Another thing that I hate is secret moves. It's like, oh, the crane kick kind of being a very good example of like if do right, no can defend. Well, it's like that's every move. But in Daniel learning that move, and kind of figuring it out on his own, that was part of his learning process. I have no problem with that. But standing there and doing that, part of the crane kick is actually getting into that position so that you can do it. It's not, I'm not just sitting here waiting for it.
yeah.
Doesn't make any sense to do that. If you're doing this, I'm a dumbass to walk straight into that.
Yeah, I don't know who it was, some stand-up comedian talked about like, luckily it's telegraphed by standing still, and he just tore the whole thing apart. Like, I don't remember who that was, but it was another one was like the other one I wrote down was like the bad guy is down or gets knocked out or whatever, like they however it happens, and then they either just stand there instead of jumping on him or running away.
Yeah. Oh yeah, what was I watching? Warrior. Guy just basically housed the dude, put him to the ground, and then just kind of turned around and started cheering, and then the dude got up and destroyed him. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you wait for the ref to call the fight,
right?
So you're the winner, or you keep on beating on them until they tap out or just go to sleep. And I don't like that kind of weird moment of mercy, because it's not even dramatic anymore because it's expected. Spartacus did that too with the battle against Theocles. Mm-hmm. Like they just, how's this guy? They stabbed him twice in the gut, and then like he just gets up, he's like, Capua, shall I begin? And then just starts housing him. Like, okay, this is kind of stupid. For as brilliant as that show was, that was a really bad turn.
So when I watch, since I've got we've got the extensive martial arts background, when you recognize something that's like not a real move, are there like, do you want to talk about like the tricks of the trade for that?
How do you mean by not a real move?
Like either like if there's some kind of arm bar that's not a real arm bar or whatever.
Oh yeah. Actually, that's a perfect example. When Steven Seagal first started doing his movies, which was basically advertisement for Aikido, which even old martial arts weirdos didn't like. We saw Aikido being advertised in the back of Black Belt magazine. We had no real clue what it was because there's like 5 schools anywhere. But one of the things he'd do, he'd have a guy in an arm bar like this, and then like a quick camera change, and the guy would turn his arm this way, and all you'd see is that arm bend again, but you thought that you saw it snapping. And a lot of times that's really a editing trick that the fight choreographer has come up with and worked with the director of photography, but the final editor didn't understand. I actually had a thing, and I saw it at the premiere after having discussed it with the director, the producer, and the DP. But I do this move. I can lift most people up by their neck and kind of choke them in the air.
Yeah. Then
and you kind of hook onto the person being choked actually grabs their wrists.
Yeah.
And so like your weight is actually balanced on my forearms rather than, my hands being in your neck. And like I put my hands here and the other person goes, and it looks like I'm choking them. Well, I was in this kind of playing a carnival, carny mutant murderer. called Jack the Sack. I was just this big oaf with a gigantic wrench and a sack over my face, like you do. And the move was supposed to be, I pick this guy up to my left and then throw him into the wall on the other side of this bathroom. And I kind of tested the wall, and it's particle board, and it doesn't feel really sturdy.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, the way I wanted to do this isn't going to be safe because I could possibly throw the guy through it. The dude weighed about 220. And so I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick him up and I'm going to swing him to about here, and then I'm going to set him down. And then we make a cut when I get here. And from there, I'm going to do the lift again, but now I'm going to put him up against the wall. So you're basically, it's going to go here, cut, bam, his head pops against the wall. Everybody there understood it except the editor. So what really happens is me picking this guy up, bouncing him, and putting him against the wall. And, you know, at the premiere, everyone's like, why would you do that? And I'm like, that wasn't supposed to be there. And so I talked to the editor, and he's like, well, nobody told me that. I'm like, you were there and we talked about this. Like I actually had it in the video, but it was, sometimes, you know, again, this is a language that we use to try to communicate visually, and it doesn't get communicated properly either by somebody listening or by somebody telling. And I think everybody kind of has to take their own responsibility for their miscommunications, and that one was mine.
Right.
But we did get it edited for the film festival, and now it's a lot more dramatic. And I still got this nice long shot of me lifting a 220-pound man, holding him up against the wall of a really crappy carnival bathroom, and choking the life out of him.
All right. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about editing. So a common thing people complain about with action movies nowadays, the fight scene is like, I think that people just call it like the Bourne Ultimatum style, where it's like 80.
Oh, the jerky cam, yeah.
Yeah, and shaky cam. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think that in certain ways it works. I think that it was brilliantly used in Snatch and in Gladiator to communicate the visceral chaos of being in a fight, but without the use of wide shots and without the use of something steady, something either on a tripod or on a dolly, something that sees what's going on. It really, I did it just for fun once upon a time. We did just a whole bunch of shaky cam moves, and people are doing this. And they're just doing the, kind of, I don't know if this is going out video, but kind of waving their arms, and you just kind of have people wave arms towards each other. You can Foley sound in and hear hits. And if the camera's shaking and it's like up too close, looks like it was a fight. You have no idea what just happened. I think the worst example is the first Transformers live action movie. Like they did a lot of shaky cam, a lot of slow-mo, but they also, you couldn't tell who the good guy was and who the bad guy was.
Right.
And I think that was a big problem with the Bourne movies, is everybody's in kind of black wool. So until you pull back and see, Matt Damon's on the right, I guess the guy on the left is the one that got stabbed. You can't really see that much. And fortunately, since John Wick and Chad Stahelski bringing back, kind of more of a Russell Mulcahy style of shooting and editing, we're starting to see these wide shots and starting to see people that know what they're doing the fight scenes. And here's what I'll say about Chad Stahelski. He is such a good fight choreographer and filmmaker that he made judo interesting to watch. And you and I have done it. It's not really that much fun to watch, but they figured out a way to make it visceral and exciting. So I'm glad to see that kind of thing. But if the cameraman doesn't know how to do it and the editor doesn't know how to cut it, no matter how great the choreography is, I always point people to the Three Musketeers and Four Musketeers from 1972. William Hobbs, one of the best fight choreographers there ever was, working with cameramen that didn't really know how to set up for the sword fights that he did. And, working with early 1970s technology versus what he has now. And this great choreography is lost because you don't get a sense of distance, urgency, timing. But that same guy also did the fight at the end of Rob Roy, which I will posit is the best sword fight ever put to screen. Just beautifully done, mismatched weapons, incredible drama. But it really is, you have to be able to communicate as a team, because you can have the best fighters and the best fight coordinator, but if you don't have the production team to film it or a fight coordinator to communicate, because if I have a fight out there that looks bad, it's as much on me as it is on the fighters and on the camera people and the editor, because somewhere in there the communication got lost, and guess what, I'm the guy that told them what to do.
Yeah. So so speaking of, like, and this will be the last question, so there's, with action movies, there's like cheesy action movies that people just kind of enjoy, and I kind of get annoyed when people say, oh, the plot doesn't matter. And I'm wondering, like, there are the really good emotional action, like the action movies that also have emotional depth, like, Ninja 2. And like, is that like a screenwriting issue? Is it the actors? Is it not what people want? And I guess I'm wondering, like, because I can definitely watch a movie with, like, it's okay, but I enjoy the fights and I'll still have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering your thoughts on, like, is it people not wanting chocolate in their peanut butter, or is it more like it's hard to write emotional drama stuff and it's hard to do action, so it's harder to put them all together, or it's like there's not enough?
There's a lot of work that goes into every part of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Even bad movies are people sweating and working a whole hell of a lot. If you want to know how rough filmmaking is, talk to a PA. Now, in terms of the totem pole of filmmaking, a PA is like the bottom of the food chain. They work their butts off to basically make sure, oh, he needs water, I'm going to get him water. Oh, we can't find a script, I'm going to go get script. Oh, we need thumbtacks. And these guys will show up at 5 o'clock in the morning and leave at midnight at the earliest. When you get actors, trained actors are very good at emotions and are very good at voice and are very good at posture. And then you have to add in fight, which, just like there are different methods of acting, there are different methods of screen fighting. And so getting people to communicate that properly, and like I said, one of the reasons why I started training with the SAFD is because I need to know how to communicate with other actors. Not everybody who has my background in film fights will do something like that, because they're like, I already know what I need to do. People just need to listen to me. And you know what? They're right too. It's not that I made the right decision. I just made a choice for myself. But it's, when it comes down to it, like, if I want to make a movie that has a great fight, sometimes I'll just come up with a simple premise and put the fight in.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to make a great movie, as a filmmaker, and just kind of speaking, in the hypothetical, a great movie with great acting that also has a great fight, I need to get people with actors that are capable of great emotional performances, that are physically capable of doing these fights, and a choreography that'll work for them. And I think my favorite example of how that can go wrong is Christopher Lee in the Star Wars Episode 2 and 3. Because phenomenal. Probably my favorite Sith Lord, but he was too old to do any of the fights himself. And so in 2, you've really got just like a couple close-up shots of him waving his sword around, and then some long shots of what is very obviously a stunt double, and quite often like just a CG image. And so you don't really get a sword fight in 2 that lives up to the Darth Maul duel from 1, or really the Luke and Vader duel of 5. then you go into 3, which I think the duel between Anakin and Dooku in 3 is probably the best fight of Star Wars until you get to Episode 8. Once Anakin or once Obi-Wan's out of the fight on the ship in the beginning, the fight between Anakin and Dooku is fantastic. It's quick and it's over, and it's not as flashy as Darth Maul, but it's really good. But Christopher Lee couldn't do that. They wanted to use an actor that has some cultural pastiche, but other than gravitas, didn't bring enough to the role. And it didn't work. And I'm a huge Christopher Lee fan, especially now. But he wasn't the right choice for that role. And the fight choreographer, Nick Gillard, I really don't think that he should have gotten that role. I think that there are a lot of better fight choreographers out there. I think that the good fights that he had were because other people were good, not because he was. I mean, Phantom Menace all day long, that is all Ray Park, and that is not Nick Gillard. And they were holding Liam Neeson back, who's done some amazing sword fights on screen. And very comfortable with it. I mean, Rob Roy, like I said, that's everyone listening, go watch that final fight and tell me that's not just breathtakingly perfect. But they just did not have the right coordination. They didn't have a guy that could go tell George what needed to be done. And they didn't have an actor that could do justice to the character that he was embodying. And it's unfortunate because he's an amazing actor, and 20 years earlier, he would have been phenomenal. And he was actually Rochefort in the 3 Musketeers and 4 Musketeers that I was talking about earlier. I'm rather circular on a lot of this stuff, I found out.
So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Is there anything you want to plug, like projects you're working on?
Well, I'll always say support Z-Fest, support the Twin Cities Film Festival, support the local film community. There's a lot of really talented people out here. There's always something fun and interesting going on, and you don't have to go to Hollywood to find these great performances. And a lot of times, go spend $10 at a movie theater, or donate $10 to a film project, and you'll see talent go further. I know a whole lot of amazing actors that got their start doing weird little things like I'm doing now, that are going on and doing some pretty crazy stuff. There's a local buddy of mine that I worked with on a film 7-8 years ago, who's now been in Mulan and The Mandalorian. His name's Punavith Koi. Look him up. He's absolutely insane. Love that dude. He's got way too many abs, but real cool cat. And this is, I've always got something coming out, and I can never remember what's coming up next because I'm always on another project. But go out, enjoy, and go see a movie that you haven't heard of. Go to once they open back up again, go watch something weird, that you wouldn't necessarily go buy popcorn to, and appreciate film for what it is, because there are 1,000 stories out there that aren't just the Avengers and Star Wars and other rehashed stories. There's unique little bits of joy out there in the world, and there's a lot of people trying to tell you stories that might get overlooked.
Yeah. So it's very true, very good stuff. So thanks for being on the show, and tune in.
Hey, thanks for having me, bud.
Yeah.